Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm benjaminnkem and today we're going to learn React by building a simple to-do application. React is a very powerful JavaScript library for building user interfaces. And by the end of this tutorial, you'll have a solid understanding of how to create, manage, and style components in React. So let's get started. Alright guys, so by the end of this video, this is what you're supposed to have. So it is just going to be a basic React to the application. So here you're just going to click on new task, and then you could enter the task, let's say like send wireframe, and click on it. It's going to add the to the task, and then it's going to show a pop-up or toast right here, which looks nice. Then you could add more. All right, so it's going to this is how you add the tasks, and then you delete tasks. Let's say you try to delete the last one, it's going to get removed from the tasks. It's going to get removed from the tasks. Also, you could actually tick off the ones that you've completed. Let's say you send wireframe, update about page, send message or adjust. Then you could also untick it. So it's going to be like toggled, and then there's going to be a tools for that also that shows that it has been updated. This is the basic form of it. So for this React to do tutorial, it is going to be separated into three parts. This is just the basic parts of the to-do list application. So I'm going to create an intermediate version of this where I'm going to be integrating a state manager that persists the tasks, because for now if I refresh everything goes away. So I'm going to integrate um, a state manager in the intermediate part of the video, but not in this video. I'm going to create another one for that, so stay tuned. And then also I'm going to create an advanced one where I'm going to create a separate backend for it using Express. And yeah, you could also learn how to interact with APIs and also learn how to use the Axios library. So don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. So let's get back into this. First, make sure you have Node.js and npm installed. If not, you could download it from nodejs.org, the official website. So you can download it from here. Now, once you have that installed, open your terminal, and in this case, we're not going to be using Create React app. We're going to be using Vite because Vite is more preferable. So you can cd into the directory you're going to use, but in this case, I'm going to cd into my desktop, then cd into tutorials. Then I'm going to paste this command npm create then vite at latest, enter y to proceed. Then it's going to ask you for the project name. I'm going to say sudo app with react, and then it's going to ask you for the framework. I'm going to take React, or then TypeScript or JavaScript. I'm going to take JavaScript for now, but maybe in the future I'm going to make a TypeScript version of this in case you want to learn that too. Now we're going to just run this command, seed into the folder we just created. They run these two commands, npm install. Now we're just going to wait for the packages to install. Alright guys, so now that we have the packages installed, we're just going to it's already in the directory, so we're just going to open it in Visual Studio Code. So to open it in Visual Studio Code from your terminal, you type in code dot then a period. If you don't have if you prefer not to use VS Code, you could use any other ID you want and just drag and drop the folder on the ID icon and score, or just run the ID and then open the project. So for me, I prefer VS Code, so I'm just going to open it. Now, this is the project structure of a React application. We have the source folder where your component goes in, and then you have your public folder. This is where you get public or public assets like images, SVGs, just assets. So in the node modules, this node modules contains all the packages that React relies on. So we don't need to go through this. This is just a packages folder. We don't have to care about that. So now what we just have to do is open the terminal. So the shortcut for that is Ctrl J. So now I'm just going to run this command npm run dev to start our local server, and it started already. So I'm just going to control click this link right here, and it's going to open up in the browser. So voila, we have a React app running locally. So let's go through the files and folders. So the main core file is the main.jsx file. So here is where the app component is rendered. And if you don't know what the component is, I'm going to let's go to the app.jsx. Now the file extension is JSX, and JSX means JavaScript and XML. But you could also change it to JS if you want. If that's the file convention you want to go for, it's still going to work. So you could either use JSX or just JS. So now, what's the component? A component is just a function that returns a template like a HTML like code, but it is called JSX. Now there are a few key differences between plain HTML and JSX. For example, you can't use if you want to define a class like on an element, it is not going to be just basic class, because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So you can't just use class. So instead of using class, you use class name. So that's just the most base difference between HTML and JSX. So now you can see that what we have here is a state, which is showing right here, and it's being updated. Now a component is just a function that returns JSX. Then we export the function as default right here, app. Then we imported it in the main.jsx file right here. So then this is how you render a component. So that's what is actually showing in the UI right now. Right. So first of all, what we'll do is clean up this app.jsx file contents. Let's just make it clean. Now, the first thing is to create the components. All you need to do is just create a function. Um, Call it app. You could use the arrow the arrow function convention, or just the normal way it was. Anyone you prefer, but I prefer using the arrow function convention. So what we just have to do is return. Let's say we want to return like a div, then we say hello world. Then voila, you've actually created your first React component. So now all we just have to do is just to export it. We have to export it, and that's all. Now the content should change. So we have here hello world right here. And why is white on this side of the screen is because it is like being styled. So if you look at this, the main.jsx file, you see an index.css, which is right here. So we have a few stylings. But what I'm going to do first of all is to just get rid of mostly everything. Alright guys, so I've made some changes to the project. So what I first did was to install Tailwind CSS, which is a dev dependency, and then Sona, if I pronounce that correctly. So Sona is a toast library for React. So this is a simple example of it. Okay, so and I'm also using Tailwind CSS for styling rather than writing custom CSS. So yeah, so the first thing you need to do is to set up Tailwind, which I already did. So you could just copy this command and paste this in your project, and then copy this as well. After this command has run successfully, you copy this because the tailwind.config.js is going to be created automatically for you. Then you copy this file content and paste it right there. Then in your index.css, you will copy this, and then you'll see right here, it's already there. You paste it right there, and that's all for Tailwind. And what you just have to do for this Sonar library is just to install it by saying npm I Sonar, and it's going to install that for you. But I've already done that already. So now, first thing I did was to clear out the other css and styles and everything. So that's about the styling. And okay, let me just go through the project real quick, the updates. So first of all, in the main.jsx, I removed the React.StrictMode because it actually causes the components to render twice. It is good in development mode, but it's actually giving an issue, so I had to remove it. So now for the app components, what I just did was just to create a simple markup right here. What I just did was to just give this div the full width of the screen and the full height of the screen as well. Then I set it to grid, then place content center. That's why you see the centered content right here. So that's a handy way to center content. So what I just did was to just create the inner content itself, the div, which this is, then give it a minimum width of 24 just 384 pixels. So this is the tailwind style, right? This tailwind style right here. If you don't have, if you're not seeing that in IntelliSense, you could install the tailwind extension, and then this is what I did right here. Um, for this header section right here, or should I call it like, yeah, just let me just say header section. What I did was to give it the padding, the font to bold, text center rounded, and then a BG primary. Now, if you don't, first of all, you for you to be able to just say BG primary, you have to actually set it in the tailwind config.js file. All I just did was to under the extend colors, you just add the primary, then I added the hex code right here. So it's going to be usable in any way you use it, or any way you want to use it rather. So that's just an overview of everything. Now let's get started and go into the functionality. Also, yeah, I forgot to mention I'm also using um React icons for icons. So yeah. So now what we're going to do right now is just to let's create a components folder under the source folder. Then here I'm just going to create the todo list the JSX folder file. Then what I'll do is I'll use the snippets shortcut, which is SFC, then to list. Let's create a div. Now this is a new component, so I'm just going to import the components into this component right here. Now paste it. control then space bar to show IntelliSense, then hit tab or enter. Now what I'll do right here is let me just split them. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is to create the to-do list box. So I'm just going to give it some stylings. And now you can see it right here. So then what I'm going to do now is to add the add button. So I'll say flex item center, justify center, git full up to all right. Now so we've created a simple basic button right here. Okay, I made a mistake, so it should be button, not div. So we have a simple button right here. So what I do was to give it a flex item center. Why I give it this flex item center is because I'm going to add this add text into a span, because I'm trying to put an icon beside it. So I'm just going to say fa plus. I'm actually going to check it from the React icons website. So let's pick this one. Okay. Um, if I okay, as you can see, it's showing right here. All right. So now that we've created a button and everything is starting to look nice, what we're going to do right now is we're going to say we're going to go back to the main app.js. Then we're going to create a state using hooks. I'll explain this right now. All right. So the first thing is use state. Now what is use state? Use state is a hook, and each hook starts with the word use. So what the use state does is that whenever the state that you define in it changes, the DOM is going to be updated. So what happens is this use state hook um exposes two values. That's the variable, and then and if another function that can be used to update that state. For example, now we're going to say to do's, then say set to do's, because this is like a convention after the state name. Then the convention that most developers use is just to put set then the to do's, that's like the name. If it was something like set name, name is going to be something like set name. So get it. So now this to do's is going to be a list, an array rather. It's going to be an array. So this array is going to be an array of tasks or an array of to do. Right. Now this set to do is a function that is used to update this to do array or this to do state. For example, now let's say I try to I create a variable. Let's say let count to be equals to 1. Then I say I update it, or I use it as an illustration right here. Let's say I put the count variable into the text right here. Now to display a dynamic value, you have to wrap it or put it into a curly bracket to tell React that okay, this is dynamic. As you can see right now, it's showing here. If you didn't put it in curly brackets, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So now that we've done that, let's just create a simple button that increments the counts variable. Let's say we say counts plus one. So if I click on this button right now, you can see that nothing is changing. This one here is not changing. But if I try to check our console, and let me just log it. Let's say I create a function to increment the count variable. Let me style it a little bit by giving it a border. All right. So, and also I'm just going to console.log the count whenever the increment function is triggered. So I'm just going to click on it. Now, as you can see, the count variable right here is being updated. It's being updated. As you can see, the increment is working, but it is still showing one here. That's because it is not telling React that the state have changed. There's no way for React to know that this state have changed because React uses what they call a virtual DOM. So it compares the real DOM with the virtual DOM, and if it takes any change, it's going to update it. But for us to trigger that update, we can't do it by just using a normal variable. That's where the use state hook comes in. So now, rather than doing this way, let's just create another use state, which this time we initialize it to 0, and then we call it count, then set count. So this is what you call array destructuring. For example, we have something like a function that returns something like this. Let's say um first name and last name, and then you could assign it into a variable here. Let's say first and last. So it's still going to work. So it's something like this. All right. So now we could actually, rather than doing it this way, let us create a new increment function, and then let's watch what happens. When I use the set count to count plus one, this time it is not going to be plus equals to, it is going to plus one, because most beginners always make a mistake to put an equals here. So it's just going to be plus one. So once I save that and then I increment, you notice that it's zero here because the initialized value here is zero. If I change this to one, it's going to be one initially. All right. So now if I click on the increment button, it is going to be updating, because now you're not just using a normal variable. It is coming from a state that is coming from the use state hook. This set counts here triggers the update mechanism of React. So that's just the uh piece of basics of using states in React. So now once I remove this, I'm just going to remove that as well. And this. All right. So now that we're back to this, now you understand how states works, the basics of states in React. All right now, so we're going to be talking about props. Now, props in React is short for properties. Props are read-only attributes that you can pass from a parent component to a child component. For example, now this component is inside the app component. The to-do list component is inside the app component. So we can say this app component is a parent to the to-do list component. So think of props as a way to configure your components by passing down data from one component to another. Because in this scenario now, we have to pass in the to-dos data into the to-do list component. So the way we pass in props is just to put in the props name, which is going to be to-dos, then assign it to the data that you want to pass in as props. So in this case, it's still going to be the to-dos array. Yeah, so now to access the props in the to-do list, all we just have to do is destructure it. To destructure it by saying just destructure it like this. Now the error having here is declared but is never used. All right. So also, okay, let me just disable this. Okay. Now we have access to the to-dos data. You can do it in both in two ways. Since props are always coming as objects, so we could actually give it to a single variable, which is just props. Then we could destructure the to-dos data from props like this, and it's still going to be the same thing. Now, since we know that the to-dos data is an array, what we can just do is we could just loop through it. Now, to loop through an array in React is very simple. All you just have to do is come down here. Then you're going to, first of all, you need to know about ternary operators in JavaScript. There are some basic things you need to know first before jumping into React, like the ternary operators, the map filter, methods on array, and things like that. So in this case, first of all, what we do is we check if to-dos exist. If it does, and the to-dos, the length is greater than 0, what we can do is we could return a div. I'll explain this coming. And if not, what we could just do is return a paragraph saying okay, no to-dos. Alright, so now let's break this down. So what's happening? First of all, what I'm doing here is just saying if the to-dos exist, the data coming from the product exists, and the length is greater than 0, meaning they are actual to-dos, we're just going to return a div for now. If not, if there is no to-do, then it's just going to display no to-dos, which it shows right here, means there's no to-do. So now, if the to-do exists right here, we could just loop through it from here. Now, the way you do it is, first of all, let's style this div. So say divide y maximum height, just in case it goes beyond 20 rem, it should be scrollable rather than going over the screen. Now what we could do is we could also loop through the to-dos since it exists. I'll explain this. Alright, now, so as you can see right here, what I'm doing is, since the to-dos exist and the length is greater than 0, meaning that there's actual to-dos inside the array, what we can just do is to just loop through it. Like I said, to make to display dynamic data, you have to put it in curly brackets. Okay. So now we map through the data, then we transform this data here that we get. In this the map takes in, or we need two parameters from it: the to do and then the index of the elements in the array. So what we just do is, when you are looping through an array in React, we have to pass in a key. This key is what React is to track the individual children. So in case one updates, it's going to use the key to differentiate it from the other children in the same array. So what we could just do is to just display it to do, because first of all, the signature we want the to do to be coming as is coming. It should be the properties we want in it to do should be an ID, the tax name, and then if it's completed, this is how we want it to be. So what we could just do is saying to do the task. That's going to be the title of the task. All right, but now it's still showing no to dos. Now all we just have to do now is just to create a logic that adds in a new to do, remove it, or update the state, either complete or um, you're adding or you're removing. So rather than just typing everything right here, I'm just going to paste it, then I'm going to explain everything. Alright guys, so before explaining the code, I'm just going to show you how to configure Sonar or add it to your React application. The Sonar is the toast library we created, or we installed rather. So I'm just going to go to my main.jsx, and then I'm just going to import it. I'm going to import toaster from Sonar, and I'm going to add it right here. See the rich colors. Now what this does is just give us that green, red, and yellow if it's like an error, success, or warning. So now the first part is how to add it to do. The thing is, this function here takes in a to do, which comes out in this form: an ID, a task, and complete. Now we know that every task that comes in newly, the default value for complete should be what? False. Okay. Now for the add to do function, it just takes in a to do object, which is in this form: ID, the task, and then complete. So what happens is, it checks if anything is passed to it. If to do is not null or undefined, it is going to return an array. It's going to update these to dos by spreading in the existing to dos data, then adding the new to do data. It's just like as if you are pushing to an array. Else, if this to dos does not exist, it's just going to return back the initial to that is already there. Now for the remove to do, you just get in a to do ID, you pass in the to do ID. Now what happens is, it is going to check if the to do is there. If there's a to do, it is going to filter out the to do with the ID passed. Now that means that it is going to remove any to do that has this ID. If not, just pass in the normal ID, just pass in the normal to dos. Don't do anything. If the to do does not exist, just don't do anything. Now for the complete to do, what happens is, in this part right here, it is going to, the to do that you're looking for, you are going to first get passing a to do ID to the complete to do function. Okay, so now we're going to set to dos, but inside these to dos, it is going to be a callback function. Now this callback function gets a parameter, which is previous, or previous state. So meaning that this prev is just like the to dos. It is actually the to dos. It's actually anything that this to do is storing. This is what it is here. it's just more convenient to use previous rather than so meaning that like you won't have to worry about what you name this variable right here. So this previous, this preview is just the same thing as the to-dos. Okay, now we're just going to find the to-dos with this ID passed to the complete to-do function. Okay, meaning that this is going to return a single to-do item from the array. Now if this to-do is not found, was not found, just return the initial the state that is already there. Don't do anything, meaning this means don't do anything, just return back the state that is already there. Okay, if not, if the to do actually exists, we're just going to toggle the complete state of the to do. For example, let's say the to do that we found, this to do right here, it has a complete state of true. What this code right here is going to do is it is going to change complete to false. Now if it is already false, it's going to change complete to true. So it's going to be like a toggling, um this is just a toggling mechanism. So now what we're now going to do right here is we're going to filter out that to do from the array, then we're going to add it back. So that's just it, we're just going to add it back. Now here, right here, I'm just going, I show the text, rather a toast, a success toast that the task was updated. If you see it from the finished version right here, once you enter a task and then you update it, it's going to show task updated. So that's where the toast is coming from. So it's going to show you task updated. So now that we've defined these three functions in the parent component, we could pass it as a prop to the child component. You don't always have to, it is not limited to just uh states or variables. It also accepts functions. So I'm just going to add that real quick. Okay, now that we've added the three functions into the to-do list component, what we could do right here is just to get it from the props. We could just destructure it from the props. That's add to-dos. Let me see. Remove to-do, and then complete to-do. Alright. Now we're going to create an input element that is going to collect the new task name or title, if I should say, or input. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write that real quick. Alright, so now that we've, first of all, let me explain this. So what I just did was to just create a div with flex item center and give a gap that is going to be between the inputs and then the cancel icon right here, as you can see. So also I give it a flex scroll, meaning for the input to take in the as much width as possible. So now that we have it, there's no way for us to track the value of the input. So what we're going to do is we're just going to first of all create an input for that, a state for that rather. So I'm just going to say const task input and set the task input state and set it to an empty string. Then what I can do is just set the value, set the value to be task input, but also we're going to have to check for an event. That's the onChange event in the inputs. Whenever it changes, what should we do? We need to update the task. So let's say on input change, let's just create a separate function. What happens is we get access to an event coming from the elements. Then we could set the task input to e dot target the event on target, then the value of the target. So what we could just do is just grab that function and put it right here. So automatically the anytime it changes, the event is passed down to this function right here, and then it updates the value of these states. Now that we've done that, let's create a separate component to display the to-dos right here. So I'm just going to create a to-dos.jsx, then I'll say sfc do create div. So now this is just a new component. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to do is I'm just going to pass it right here. So don't forget to put in a key whenever you're looking through an array. Then I'm going to also import it right here. All right. So as we can see, we're trying to look through an array of to-dos, but we also have to pass in the to-do data as props to the to-do with a capital T components. All right. So what we're now going to do is we're just going to pass in the to-do data into the to-do component. Also, we also want to pass in the complete to-do and remove to-do function. I'll show you why in a second. Okay, after we've done that, we could also get the props and destructure it. Okay, need to do and add to do. All right, so I'm just going to ignore this thing real quick. Okay, now that we have that, what I'm just going to do. Okay, I think there's a typo here. It's supposed to be add to do. Yes, it's supposed to be add to do. Okay, so to display the to do, don't forget this is the signature here, the ID, the task, and the complete. So we're just going to style it a little bit. So instead of me typing this out, let me just paste it real quick. So then I'll explain what's happening. All right. So please keep in mind that I change this add to do to remove to do. Oh, okay, I removed the add to do. So what happens is I'm just giving it a little bit of styling. Then okay, when there's data, is going to show what it looks like. First of all, let's go back to the to-do list, and then we're going to work on adding the actual data when this add button is pressed. So now what we're going to do is, okay, what I'll just do real quick is just to paste in the function and then explain, so you won't have to watch me type it. Okay, now so for this action function, we use the add to do function coming from the properties that was passed down from the app components right here. Now remember, this is the signature of data we want to be passing to the to do, and ID, task, and complete. So for the task, we assign it to the task input right here. So whatever the user types, it's going to be the task input. And then the ID, what I just did was just for the ID is just a randomly generated UUID from the crypto library. This is built into JavaScript, so you don't need to worry about it. So now, like we said, the default value for complete should be false. So after that, after we add it to do, we're just going to show a toast message that says new task added successfully. If we check the finished version, you can see it. Once there's a task add, it shows this toast right here. All right, so after that, we reset the task input to be an empty string. Okay, so now what we're just going to do is we're just going to add this action function to the button, the add button. Okay, so now let's try it. Let's say task one, and you can see that we have the new task added successfully. Now there's a slight change to this. If you notice in this place here, there's a new task. Once I click on new task, the input shows up. Then once I enter the input and I'm done with it, and I click on add, the input the input goes away. So for us to implement that, what I'm just going to do right now, because if I try to enter a new task, it's not actually going to go away. So I'm just going to do that real quick. First of all, what happens is I'm going to create a new state to track that. Let's say add new on set new state false. Now what this does is it's going to be like a toggle for us to remove the input or keep it, or show it rather. So I'll let me show you what I'm talking about. So if it's the add new is on, it should show the input elements. If not, it shouldn't. It should be hidden. So what I'm going to do is say add new on and show it. This means if the add new is on, it's going to show it. Else, it's not going to show anything. So since we set it to false, it should be hidden. So if I show you, if we check it out now, it is not showing actually. If I try to click on add, it's just adding spaces. Understand? It's just adding spaces. Now, if you look at this list right here, the elements, we'll get back to the input later. If you look at the elements right here, it's coming from the to do to do component that we created. What happens is when you click on the little circle that is here, which this is right here, the size theory, meaning width and height. Now, if the to do is complete, this is a ternary operation. If the to do is complete, you notice that this class name is closed with backticks. So we could add dynamic values here. Now, if the to do is complete, it's going to show you bj primary. It's going to have a primary background color. Else, it's not going to have anything. Now, once you click on this little circle, it is going to indicate that okay, this task is complete. Now, for the text right here, if it is complete, it's going to stroke a line through it, through the text, and then it is displaying the task name, like the task value itself. And there's a button to delete it. There's a button for deleting. All you have to do is just pass in the todo.id to the remove to do function, which we which is coming from this app function as well, this app component rather. The remove to do has accepts a to do id, then filters out the to do from the array. All right, so that covers that for the to do components. So if we test out now, it works. Okay, let's delete everything now. Then let's get back to the inputs problem. Now if we look at it, if we click on add, it's just adding an empty task without bringing out the inputs. That's because we don't have a check on this to do to in this action function. So we just have to do is check it. If add new is on, first of all, let's check if it is not on. If add new is on, let's start with that. If add new is on, then do the basic thing, meaning that if the input is showing, that means there's definitely going to be a task input. So we could also make a little check if there's any task input. If not task input, you could just say something like to store error, no task data, no task input provided, then you return, else is going to add it to the list. Now, once the add new is off, once the add new on is on, it's going to run this function. Else, what I'll just do is just set the add new on to true and set it to false right here. So now what this does is immediately you add it to do, hide the input. So I can just leave a comment here that says this hides the input after adding it to do. Now this one here, if you click on the action button and the add new on is not on, so just turns on the add new state. Now let's try it out. If I click on it, you can see that it's there. So and if you try to add a task that does not have a content, it's going to give an error. So we could also make that check. Then we'll say task one. If I add it, it's going to work properly. If I show add again, and I try task two, as you can see, it's working properly. So we could also delete, could complete, and so yeah, that's basically it. So if you don't understand, you can like rewind back in the video, or if I'm talking too fast, you could try to slow things down or slow the video down to understand everything. So let's basically just go through everything that happened. So first of all, initially there's what they call React.strict mode, but this React.strict mode sometimes gives issues because it actually makes an element or a component rather to render like twice to catch errors. That's in development mode, but it does not happen like that in production. But the issue with that is that if I add a task and then I try to complete that task by clicking on this little circle here to indicate that the task is complete. If it renders the component twice, it's going to make this toggle like as if nothing happened. Like it is going to set it to true then false immediately. So it's just going to be like nothing happened. That was why it was removed. So now the second thing is adding the toaster components right on top of the app components. So that one's very easy. Just import it from Sonar, put it on top of the app components, and that's all for that. Now for the app components, what do you say components are? Components returns GSX code. So we also learned about states. Using use state is the most, let's say the most used state hooks. So it returns two things. It's the states and the states updates function. I don't know how to put it, but it's like a function that when you call it, it's going to trigger a UI update. Yeah, something like that. So now we define three functions: the add to do, remove to do, and complete to do. Now the add to do is basically simple. It checks if this to do is valid or exists. If it does, we typically push it to the to do's array right here. We spread the data we have already, then add it to the back of it. So now for the remove to do, what the remove to do does is just to filter the sudo by the ID. To make things short, we could just do this. Rather than doing some checks, we could just do this. Just filter out the to do based on the to do ID that was passed. Now for the complete to do is first of all you find the to do by to do ID. What happens? What you do here is change the complete state. You toggle it, and then you the new return the new to dos. Okay. So now these three main functions was passed down to a prop to the to-do list component: add to do, remove to do, complete to do. This is how to pass in props. Now to get the data from the props, what we have to do is we could either destructure it like this straight away, or we could just um use a props variable, anyone you prefer. And now for the other parts, we created a new state which is going to track the task input, and then a new state to track if the input element should show or not. Then a function that is going to update the task input whenever the input changes. Okay, so we also have a function which is action that adds the to do to the to do's array and makes a little validations like checking for empty task inputs. Then we add it, show toast, reset the task inputs, and then turn off the input element. That's hide it once you are done adding it to do. So it won't be there. Else, if the add new is not on, we're just going to toggle it on for us to be able to add new to dos. Now, for dynamic values, you have to put things in curly brackets. You you check there's a check here to check if the to do exists and the length is greater than zero. If the length is greater than zero, you loop through it. In here, you loop through it. Then you pass in your data to the to do component itself. Then we get it from the props. We get functions from the prop and then display it here. And yeah, that's basically it. Please, if you have any question, don't don't hesitate to drop those questions in the comment section. I will do my best to reply you or drop a new video to clarify anything. So, all right, that should be it. And also, if you want to check the code for this project, I'm going to upload it to my GitHub, or it's already actually there in my GitHub already. So you could just go to my GitHub/benjaminnkem slash todo-app with React, and it's gonna be right there. Okay, all right. So please don't forget to like and subscribe. Smash the like button and please hit the subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.